The 1971D United States coin you are referring to is most commonly the 1971D Kennedy half-dollar, though it could also be a 1971D Eisenhower dollar, since both were minted in Denver and carry the phrases "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "E Pluribus Unum." The D mint mark indicates the coin was produced at the Denver Mint in Colorado. Beginning in 1968, mint marks were placed on the obverse, front, of the coin, so on a 1971D Kennedy half-dollar, the small d appears below President John F. Kennedy's portrait near the date. The Kennedy half-dollar was first issued in 1964 to honor President Kennedy after his assassination in 1963, and by 1971 the coin's composition had changed from its earlier silver content to a copper-nickel-clad composition, meaning it contains no silver. Specifically, the 1971D half-dollar is made of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a core of pure copper, giving it a total weight of 11.34 grams and a diameter of 30.6 millimeters. The obverse, front, features a left-facing portrait of Kennedy designed by Gilroy Roberts, with the word Liberty around the top rim, the date 1971 at the bottom, and the motto "In God We Trust" split below the chin. The reverse, back, designed by Frank Gasparo, shows a heraldic eagle holding an olive branch and arrows, adapted from the presidential seal, with United States of America around the top, E Pluribus Unum above the eagle's head, and the denomination half-dollar at the bottom. In 1971, the Denver Mint produced over 300 million Kennedy half-dollars, making the 1971D very common in circulated condition, and because it contains no silver, its value is usually close to face value, 50 cents, unless it is an uncirculated mint state condition. Uncirculated examples, sometimes called untitled or uncirculated coins, are coins that were never used in everyday commerce and therefore show no wear, often retaining their original mint luster. Higher-grade specimens graded MS-65 or above by professional grading services such as PCGS or NGC can have modest collector premiums. If instead you are referring to the 1971D Eisenhower dollar, that coin was also produced in large numbers at the Denver Mint and was the first dollar coin issued after the Peace Dollar series ended in 1935. It honors President Dwight D. Eisenhower and commemorates the Apollo 11 moon landing on the reverse, featuring an eagle landing on the moon with Earth in the background, along with the inscriptions United States of America, E Pluribus Unum, and $1. The 1971D Eisenhower dollar intended for circulation was also copper-nickel clad and contains no silver, weighs 22.68 grams, and measures 38.1 millimeters in diameter. In general, most 1971D circulation coins are not rare because of their high mintage numbers, but condition, strike quality, and any minting errors, such as double dies, off-center strikes, or clipped planchets, can increase value significantly. Collectors often examine details like luster, contact marks, strike sharpness in Kennedy's hair or Eisenhower's hair, and overall eye appeal when determining grade and value. If you would like, you can tell me whether your coin is a half-dollar or a large dollar, and I can give you even more specific information about its history, mintage numbers, grading scale, and approximate collector value. Next top. The United States of America 1974 1-cent coin, commonly called the 1974 Lincoln penny, is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series that began in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth and marked a major change in American coinage because it was the first regular circulating U.S. coin to feature an actual historical figure rather than the symbolic figure of liberty. On the obverse, or front, of the 1974 penny is a right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln. Designed by Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB appear in small letters on the reverse at the bottom rim, and across the top edge of the obverse is the national motto "In God We Trust," a phrase first appearing on U.S. coins during the Civil War era and later required by law on all denominations, while the word liberty appears to the left of Lincoln's portrait and the date 1974 appears to the right, sometimes accompanied by a small mint mark directly beneath the date indicating where the coin was produced, with no mint marks signifying the Philadelphia Mint, a D indicating the Denver Mint, and an S indicating the San Francisco Mint, the latter typically producing proof coins for collectors. The reverse side of the 1974 cent features the Lincoln Memorial design created by Frank Gasparo in 1959 to replace the earlier wheat ears design that had been used from 1909 to 1958, and this reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., symbolizing national unity and remembrance, with the words United States of America curving along the top rim, the Latin motto E pluribus unum placed just above the memorial, meaning out of many, one, representing the union of the states into one nation, and the denomination 1 cent boldly inscribed at the bottom. Interestingly, if examined closely with magnification, the small seated statue of Lincoln can be seen between the central columns of the memorial, making this one of the few coins in the world to depict the same person on both sides. The 1974 penny was struck in extremely large quantities, with billions minted at Philadelphia and Denver and hundreds of millions of proof coins struck at San Francisco, making it one of the more common dates in the Lincoln Memorial series, and because of these high mintage numbers, most circulated examples are worth only their face value of 1 cent, though uncirculated specimens that retain their original red mint luster can carry modest premiums. Depending on grade, which is determined by factors such as surface preservation, absence of contact marks, sharpness of detail in Lincoln's hair and beard, and overall eye appeal. In terms of composition, standard 1974 cents were made primarily of 95% copper with 5% zinc, and trace elements, weighing approximately 3.11 grams and measuring 19 millimeters in diameter. But the year 1974 is particularly notable in U.S. numismatic history because rising copper prices during the early 1970s led the U.S. Mint to experiment with alternative compositions, resulting in the creation of a limited number of experimental aluminum cents dated 1974 that were struck as pattern coins and distributed to members of Congress for evaluation, though these aluminum pieces were never officially released into circulation and most were later destroyed, making surviving examples extremely rare and legally restricted. The regular copper 1974 penny, however, continued the long tradition of bronze Lincoln cents that lasted until 1982, when the mint changed the composition to a zinc core with thin copper plating due to ongoing metal cost concerns. Collectors of the 1974 cent often look for varieties in mint errors, including double die obverse where lettering or the date appears double due to a misalignment during die creation, off-center strikes where the design is not properly centered on the planchet, clipped planchets where part of the coin's edge is missing due to a cutting error, and coins struck on incorrect planchets, all of which can increase value significantly beyond face value. Proof versions struck at San Francisco are distinguished by their mirror-like fields and frosted design elements and were sold in special proof sets to collectors, often carefully preserved in protective packaging, and these proof coins can be worth more depending on condition, particularly those graded PR69 or PR70 by professional grading services. The 1974 Lincoln cent also reflects the broader economic climate of the United States during the 1970s, a time marked by inflation, rising commodity prices, and significant changes in coinage metal content across multiple denominations, illustrating how even a small coin like the penny can reveal important aspects of national history, policy, and economic conditions. Today, while most 1974 pennies found in pocket change are common and primarily of sentimental or educational value, high-grade red uncirculated coins, rare mint errors. And next top. The 1976 D bicentennial quarter was issued by the United States Mint to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, marking America's bicentennial celebration in 1976. Instead of carrying a single-year date, the coin displays the dual date 1776 to 1976 to honor the 200-year span of American independence, and although it says 1976, these special coins were actually produced during both 1975 and 1976 because the U.S. Mint decided that no quarters would carry the date 1975, making the bicentennial design unique for that two-year period. The D Mint mark on your coin indicates that it was struck at the Denver Mint in Denver, Colorado, one of the main U.S. Mint facilities responsible for producing circulating coinage for the western United States. And in fact the Denver Mint produced more than 860 million bicentennial quarters, which makes the 1976 D version very common in circulation even today. On the obverse, front, of the coin you We'll see the familiar left-facing portrait of George Washington, the first President of the United States, a design originally created by sculptor John Flanagan in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth, and surrounding the portrait are the inscriptions Liberty at the top, In God We Trust to the left of Washington's neck, and the dual date 1776 to 1976 at the bottom, while the small D mint mark appears to the right of Washington's ponytail. The phrase In God We Trust is the official national motto of the United States, first appearing on coins during the Civil War in the 1860s and later mandated for all U.S. coins in the 20th century, while liberty represents the core American value of freedom, and e pluribus unum, which appears on the reverse of the coin, is a Latin phrase meaning out of many, one, symbolizing the union of the original 13 colonies into one nation. The reverse, back, of the 1976 bicentennial quarter is different from regular quarters because instead of the traditional eagle design used from 1932 to 1974 and again after 1976, it features a colonial drummer boy holding a drum and drumsticks, with a victory torch encircled by 13 stars representing the original colonies, and this special reverse design was created by artist Jack L. Ahr, whose initials JLA appear near the drummer's leg. Along the top edge of the reverse are the words United States of America, above the drummer is E pluribus unum, and at the bottom is the denomination quarter dollar. The coin itself is composed of a copper-nickel-clad alloy, meaning it has an inner core of pure copper bonded between outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it a silver appearance on the outside but showing a copper stripe along the edge. It weighs 5.67 grams. Has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and features a ridged edge to prevent counterfeiting and shaving of metal, while most 1976 D bicentennial quarters are worth only their face value of 25 cents because of the extremely high mintage and widespread saving by the public during the bicentennial celebration. Coins in uncirculated condition with full original mint luster may sell for $1 to several dollars, and examples graded MS65 or higher by professional grading services can sometimes reach higher values depending on appeal and market demand. There were also special 40% silver bicentennial quarters produced mainly at the San Francisco Mint with an S mint mark for collectors, but the Denver D coins struck for circulation are not silver, and you can confirm this by checking the edge for the visible copper layer. Historically, the bicentennial coin program was authorized by Congress in 1973 and included special reverse designs for the quarter, half-dollar, and dollar coins, making 1976 one of the most memorable years in modern U.S. coinage, and because these coins were widely saved as souvenirs of America's 200th birthday, they remain very common today, yet they still hold sentimental and patriotic value for many collectors and citizens as symbols of national pride and history. If you would like, you can tell me the exact size of your coin, small like a quarter, medium like a half-dollar, or large like a dollar, and I can give even more specific details about that exact denomination. Next top. The coin you are describing is a 1978 D United States 1-cent coin, Lincoln Memorial penny, and it carries several important inscriptions that reflect American history, national identity, and coinage tradition. On the front of the coin, called the obverse, you will see a portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, who led the nation during the Civil War from 1861 until his assassination in 1865. His image has appeared on the 1-cent coin since 1909, when the United States honored the 100th anniversary of his birth, making it the first regular U.S. circulating coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic figure. The words "In God We Trust" appear above Lincoln's head. This phrase has appeared on U.S. coins since the 19th century and became the official national motto in 1956. To the left of Lincoln is the word Liberty, a traditional inscription symbolizing freedom, democracy, and the founding ideals of the nation. To the right of Lincoln's portrait is the date 1978, and just below the date you will find the small D mint mark, which indicates the coin was produced at the Denver Mint in Colorado. The United States Mint has several facilities, including Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, and West Point, and each mint uses its own identifying mark. The D tells collectors that this particular coin was struck in Denver. On the back of the coin, called the reverse, you will see the Lincoln Memorial, the famous monument in Washington, D.C., which was added to the design in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Above the memorial are the words United States of America, identifying the issuing country. Just below that appears the Latin phrase e pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one, symbolizing the unity of the individual states forming one nation. At the bottom of the reverse are the words 1 cent, which state the denomination or value of the coin. Interestingly, if you look very closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, you can see a tiny representation of Lincoln's seated statue inside, meaning Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin, a unique feature in U.S. coinage. The 1978 D penny was made primarily of 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing approximately 3.11 grams, and measuring 19 millimeters in diameter, with a smooth edge. This composition was standard for pennies from 1962 until mid-1982, when rising copper prices led the mint to change to a mostly zinc composition with a thin copper plating. Because the 1978 penny contains a high percentage of copper, it has a distinct reddish color when new, although over time exposure to air and handling can cause it to turn brown due to oxidation. Collectors often classify these coins by color as red, RD, red-brown, RB, or brown, BN, with bright red uncirculated coins generally being more desirable. The Denver Mint produced a very large quantity of 1978 D pennies, over 5.5 billion pieces, making it a very common coin in circulation. Due to this high mintage, most examples are worth only their face value of 1 cent, especially if they show were from circulation. However, coins in uncirculated condition with strong original red luster can be worth a small premium, sometimes a few cents to a few dollars depending on their grade. Professional grading services use a numerical scale from 1 to 70 to evaluate condition, with mint state, MS, grades indicating no wear. Only coins in very high mint state grades such as MS 66 or higher tend to bring notable premiums. Some collectors also look for mint errors such as off-center strikes, double dies, die cracks, clipped planchets, or other unusual features, which can increase value. Historically, 1978 was a period during President Jimmy Carter's administration when the United States was dealing with inflation and energy issues, and coins like the Lincoln cent were heavily used in everyday commerce, from vending machines to grocery transactions. The Lincoln Memorial design remained on the reverse of the penny until 2008, after which special bicentennial designs were introduced in 2009, followed by the Union Shield design in 2010. Overall, the 1978 D United States 1 cent coin is a classic example of late 20th century American coinage, combining national mottos, presidential history, symbolic architecture, and traditional inscriptions that reflect the country's heritage, unity, and values. Next top. The 1982 United States coin you are describing is most commonly a Lincoln penny, also called a Lincoln cent, which features the inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "E Pluribus Unum," and the date 1982. The Lincoln cent is one of the most iconic and longest-running coins in American history, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. The obverse, front, of the coin shows a right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB appear on some versions of the coin. Above Lincoln's head is the phrase "In God We Trust," which became a regular inscription on U.S. coins in the 20th century after first appearing during the Civil War era in 1864, reflecting the nation's religious sentiments during a time of crisis. To the left of Lincoln's portrait appears the word liberty, representing one of the foundational ideals of the United States, symbolizing freedom, democracy, and individual rights. To the right of the portrait is the year of minting, which in your case is 1982. On the reverse, back, of the 1982 Lincoln cent, you would typically see the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This reverse was designed by Frank Gasparo and features an image of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., with the small figure of the seated Lincoln statue visible between the columns if examined closely. Above the memorial are the words "United States of America," and beneath that appears the Latin motto "E Pluribus Unum," which means "out of many, one," symbolizing the union of the original 13 colonies into one nation, and more broadly, the unity of diverse states and peoples forming a single country. Below the memorial is the denomination 1 cent. The year 1982 is particularly significant in the history of the Lincoln cent because it marked a major transition in the coin's composition. Due to rising copper prices in the late 1970s and early 1980s, the U.S. Mint decided to change the composition of the penny from primarily copper, 95% copper and 5% zinc, to a copper-plated zinc composition, 97.5% zinc core with 2.5% copper plating. As a result, there are actually multiple varieties of the 1982 penny, making it one of the most interesting years for collectors. In fact, there are 7 different recognized varieties of the 1982 Lincoln cent, including differences in mint mark: Philadelphia with no mint mark, Denver with a D mint mark, and San Francisco proof coins with an S mint mark, composition, copper versus zinc, and even differences in the size of the date, large date versus small date varieties. The Philadelphia Mint produced both copper and zinc versions with large and small dates, while the Denver Mint also produced both compositions, though certain combinations are rarer than others. The small date copper 1982 D penny is especially rare and valuable because it was not widely released, and examples that have been authenticated can be worth significant sums to collectors. One way to distinguish between the copper and zinc versions is by weight. Copper pennies from early 1982 weigh about 3.11 grams, while the zinc versions weigh about 2.5 grams. Collectors often use a precise digital scale to determine the composition. The change in metal content in 1982 represents a broader economic story about inflation, commodity prices, and the cost of producing coinage, reflecting how even small everyday objects like pennies are influenced by global markets and government policy. The phrase "In God We Trust" has its own deep history, first appearing on U.S. coins during the Civil War and later becoming the official national motto of the United States in 1956, during the Cold War era, as a way to distinguish the U.S. from officially atheistic communist nations. E pluribus unum, adopted in 1782 for the Great Seal of the United States, long served as a de facto national motto before "In God We Trust" was officially designated. Together, these inscriptions reflect both the spiritual and political philosophy embedded in American identity. The Lincoln cent itself has undergone several reverse design changes since 1982. In 2009, to celebrate Lincoln's 200th birthday, the reverse featured 4 different designs representing stages of Lincoln's life, and in 2010 the reverse was changed to a Union Shield design, symbolizing Lincoln's preservation of the United States during the Civil War. However, in 1982, the reverse would still have been the Lincoln Memorial. If your coin appears untitled or without a mint mark, it was likely minted in Philadelphia, as Philadelphia coins traditionally did not carry a mint mark on cents during that period. Condition also greatly affects value. Circulated 1982 pennies are usually worth only 1 cent unless they are rare varieties, but uncirculated or error coins may carry premium value. Errors such as double dies. Next top. The United States of America 1 cent coin dated 1990, commonly known as the 1990 Lincoln penny or Lincoln cent, is part of one of the longest-running and most historically significant coin series in American history, and it carries the inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "E pluribus unum," each of which reflects important national ideals and traditions. The obverse, front, of the 1990 penny features the familiar right-facing portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, a design originally created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, making the Lincoln cent the first regular-issue United States coin to depict a real historical person rather than a symbolic figure, and above Lincoln's head appears the national motto "In God We Trust," a phrase that first appeared on U.S. coins during the Civil War in 1864 and was later declared the official national motto of the United States in 1956 during the Cold War period, symbolizing the country's cultural and spiritual heritage. To the left of Lincoln's portrait is the word "liberty," representing the foundational American principle of freedom and democracy that dates back to the Declaration of Independence in 1776, while to the right of the portrait is the year 1990, indicating the coin's year of minting, and just below the date you may see a mint mark depending on where the coin was produced, as 1990 pennies were struck at 3 U.S. Mint. Facilities: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, marked with a D; and San Francisco, marked with an S4. Proof coins intended primarily for collectors. The reverse, back, of the 1990 penny features the Lincoln Memorial design, which was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth and was designed by Frank Gasparo, showing a detailed image of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and if viewed carefully, the tiny seated statue of Lincoln can be seen between the columns of the memorial, a remarkable detail for such a small coin, with the words United States of America inscribed along the top rim, the Latin motto E pluribus unum just below it, meaning out of many, one, symbolizing the unity of the original 13 colonies and later the 50 states into one nation, and the denomination 1 cent appearing at the bottom. By 1990, the composition of the penny had already been changed from the earlier 95% copper alloy used before mid-1982 to a copper-plated zinc composition consisting of 97.5% zinc with a thin outer layer of 2.5% copper, a change made because rising copper prices had made the older pennies too expensive to produce, and as a result, a 1990 penny weighs approximately 2.5 grams and has a diameter of 19.05 millimeters with a thickness of about 1.52 millimeters and a plain edge, meaning it does not have reading like quarters or dimes. In terms of mintage, hundreds of millions to billions of 1990 pennies were produced, making them very common in circulation even today, and because of this high production volume, most circulated examples are worth only their face value of 1 cent unless they are in uncirculated condition or have special characteristics, while proof coins from the San Francisco Mint were struck with specially prepared dies and polished planchets to create a mirror-like background and frosted raised design elements, making them more collectible and typically sold in proof sets. Although 1990 pennies are generally common, collectors do look for specific varieties in mint errors, such as doubled dies, where design elements appear doubled due to a misalignment during die creation, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or other minting anomalies, and one notable variety from 1990 is the 1990 NOS proof penny, an extremely rare error coin in which the San Francisco proof coin was mistakenly struck without the S mint mark, making it highly valuable and sought after among collectors, with authenticated examples selling for thousands of dollars at auction due to their rarity. The Lincoln Cent series itself reflects more than just currency, as it serves as a miniature piece of American history, connecting generations through everyday commerce while honoring Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, who led the nation through the Civil War and worked to preserve the Union and abolish slavery, and the continued use of his portrait on the penny for over a century demonstrates the enduring respect for his leadership and legacy. By 1990, the United States was entering the final decade of the 20th century, a period marked by technological growth, the end of the Cold War, and economic change, and the penny remained a fundamental part of daily transactions despite debates over its production cost and purchasing power, as inflation had significantly reduced the buying power of 1 cent compared to earlier decades, yet the coin continued to be produced in vast quantities.